Welcome back, Mark.
Thank you.
Welcome back to Inside Music Valley,
Thank you.
version 2.0 of the podcast.
Yeah.
After many reattempts, we're here having another chat. And I'm really excited to get an update on where things are at with you because it's been quite a interesting time for you coming off the tour of the Planet Shakers tour.
Yeah.
So before we go into that, why don't you tell us, the listeners, who you are, a bit about Mark, where you come from, and we'll go from there.
I'm a music creative from Zimbabwe. Initially a pianist. I actually started playing acoustic guitar first. Then I became a pianist in church. Then through that started directing music for different artists in the jazz world as well. And then from there I became a music producer, mostly to make my own music, but I ended up having to make music for others. I've done so many different productions. Initially, like I said, as a music director, then became a music producer, and then I also was part of, executive planning committees and all that for some of these events. Built a bit of a successful career in Africa. Initially, worked with some amazing artists, big names there, and then started getting into ministry as well. Traveled with an itinerant speaker, playing keys behind him, and studied in Bible school. But I also then studied music with Berkeley, jazz piano and music production. And at the pinnacle of my career, I had also then gone into events, the audiovisual side of things. We were running a company that was doing all the major events in Zimbabwe. And then that's at the point where I then moved to Australia because my wife got a job here, and we moved our family here, started all over again. Bumped into Music Valley in the first 2 months or so after getting here, and it was great because I also live in this community, and we've then been able to do some work together, and also just, creating some relationships with some of the artists and creatives in this community. So that's the basic scope of my career and who I am and what I do.
You've got quite a following, I noticed, online as well. I mean, let's not hold back here. I think you've got 45,000 followers on Instagram. And YouTube is
35 at 35? YouTube, getting close to 10. TikTok is also happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got like 25, I think, on 25K on TikTok. But yeah, they're just numbers. There was obviously a time in my career where I chose to go the branding route. Was very big on branding. I wasn't posting or doing anything unless if it's on brand, which helped create a lot of relationships. And also people start to notice that you are intentional online and you're consistent and you're constantly doing these big things. So people then obviously kind of get attracted to what you're doing, start following. So that's where there was a season where I had a big drive on that. I'm not in that season anymore. These days, I don't mind posting the authentic stuff. I don't mind posting. I recently posted a very interesting studio experience with a client, which people wouldn't normally talk about, the fails in studio. But I don't mind doing that stuff now because I guess that's part of authenticity, which is a big deal when it comes to what I want to put out now. So, yeah, there's still that side where I know I have a responsibility to mold, to mentor, to share the wisdom from the things that I've done. But I'm also not going to hold back and not share the fails, the downsides, because there are a lot of that in our creative world.
Well, that's why we're here. We really want to expose a lot of that and just, be real and honest with our listeners out there in terms of what really goes on behind the world of a producer, because you play many hats as a creative director and producer. So why don't we start with the producer role? Now, you've just come off the back of the Planet Shakers tour in, which town was it?
It was South Africa. We were in four cities in South Africa and Botswana as well.
Yeah.
We had to stop in Botswana, yeah.
For those of you who don't know Planet Shakers, why don't you just share briefly what Planet Shakers is, the type of conference it is? And
Planet Shakers is a church that was built off of conferences, started as a conference, which then has evolved into an actual, worship ministry that mainly the focus is to bring Jesus to the people, get people to be born again, to be discipled. The movement is based around discipleship. That also has at the back of it a very professional music system in place that obviously at the first, the foundation of it is to just do music that we do in church for the people and to minister to the Lord. But there's such an excellence there that the music that's done has reached millions by now, and Planet Shakers is impacting the world through the praise and worship. It's just basic praise and worship, but it has taken a much more global route, and part of that impact is in Africa, where we were for that tour, and it was amazing to see so many different rooms in different cities filled with people who are just, praising and worshiping Jesus.
We're talking like small stadiums or, arenas?
Yeah, arenas.
5,000,
so
10,000?
We did the MKIC at some point here with the Lions, Lions convention.
Yep.
And Planet Shakers conferences happen there now every January, and the rooms are always filled for 4 days in a row. And that's the level, the magnitude of what we're talking about.
Yeah, fantastic. So, so your role there was primarily music director, or were you? Tell us what your role was within that.
So, like I said, there's a very high level of, I would say, ministry. Which involves very gifted musicians. I'm talking world-class musicians. So everyone on the team can actually direct.
Right.
So the creative pastor, the creative director, is the lead vocalist.
Right.
So he does have a button where he's directing the band at the same time, in between when he can, when he's not singing. But it's mainly the role of the bassist and the main keyboard player to direct, to music direct in the services or in the concerts that are happening, and we usually share between the bassist and the keyboardist the role of telling the team where we're going. Tracks are usually run by the bassist, so he then keeps the song form, but where there's spontaneous moments and you're just flowing, the keyboard player usually has to step up and keep the entire team on the same page as to where we're going, or at least catch what the leader is saying and then communicate it to everyone else so that we're on the same page.
Yeah, especially with arrangements and harmonies and sort of different aspects there. Yeah, exciting. And then, so that was over 4 cities and was over a space of a couple of weeks, I think you said? Yeah.
2 weeks, 5, I would say 5 cities, including Botswana, Gaborone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. So you've obviously produced a lot of different artists over the years.
Yeah.
So I want to go a little bit more into that and talk a bit about how, what it's like working with clients. Let's start with, the cultural shift. In Australia, it's a very, you've probably seen a bit of a culture shift.
Yeah.
So I'd like to go into this a little bit more in terms of the mindset, the expectations of working with different nationalities and ethnicities. How have you found that transition coming from Zimbabwe and, being a pretty big icon, pretty much the go-to, in the industry, to coming into Melbourne and working with, being Point Cook, which is Australia's most multicultural suburb.
Yeah.
How's that been for you?
It was quite a shift. It's a different kind of mindset that you need to have coming here. Initially, back in Zimbabwe, I would say there's a very thriving community. It's close-knit. It's still the same here, still not as, it's mostly the same kind of individuals doing stuff in the creative space. But I would say the diversity is in the genres here. there's so much diversity, and people are in their different spaces doing their own. The rock people are in their rock space. The jazz people have their own thing going. The gospel people are not as thriving here as back home in Zimbabwe. So I had to change the way I approach things. Things came much easier then in Zimbabwe because you already know who to talk to for gear, for like the artists, the singers themselves, session musicians and things like that. There's already a thriving, I guess, network there when it comes to that. Here we've had to build, especially on my side for the gospel music side of things, which is what my forte is. And some of those people are people who have come through the doors of Music Valley and they're just looking to record something. And then when you notice that, oh, we're actually of the same mind. We're trying to achieve the same thing. And I've been able to build teams with different people who have also, come through these doors or through the church or different spaces. But the biggest shift for me has been the idea that I need to specialize. I used to specialize much more back home. Here I've had to sort of shift based on who the client is, what their needs are, because their needs differ big time. One needs visuals, another needs help building a team, another needs just basic music production. But most of the times people here, as much as we are in the first world and as much as there's an abundance of resources, but people don't know how to use them. People don't know the work that goes into, by the time you put your song out there, they don't know the work that goes into it's not as simple as you just pick up a microphone, record, or call someone in studio and you just record and that's it. There's a whole entire world to just putting your stuff out there, and that having to take on even more hats to be able to assist just one person. And obviously with one person, their needs are probably similar to someone else's, and that's what I've seen. Most of them kind of need the same thing but at different levels. So the one who needs visuals maybe has a camera of their own that they've been shooting themselves with, but the next person needs visuals but they don't even have the camera. So it's having to balance what each person needs, but still create a sort of standard that, whatever products you're putting out, they are meeting a specific standard.
Yeah. So this letter leads us to a post that you put up recently about a client that you work with who came in with, I guess, one set of expectations and then at some point had to kind of rejig the whole entire structure, and then it ended up being a positive result. Why don't you walk us through that process? And, bear in mind, people listening to this episode now are probably either on one side where they're looking to hire a producer or work with one, or perhaps working with one and they're trying to understand the process. Or they are producers themselves and they kind of need to understand what it is that they need to, how they need to structure their sessions, what kind of expectations or agreements need to be laid out in the beginning. Tell us that process and what happened.
The basic summary of what happened is that usually how I work is I get voice notes, or someone comes in, they record like a guide for me. Then I sit with it, I flesh it out, put music to whatever their idea is, and then bounce off, send it to them. They like it, they don't. We change what needs to be changed, which usually works out well. Most of the times when I send out stuff to someone, they like what I've made.
Right.
But this time around, which has happened before, they then say, no, I don't even recognize my song anymore. This doesn't sound like my original idea. So I'm lost.
They gave you a vocal line?
They gave me a vocal line, but it came with a bit of like underlying music, which was very basic. It was very repetitive and very monotonous. So my creative juices were flowing and telling me that, we could change this to this so that we break the monotony and create a structure. There has to be a song structure. There has to be an intro, a verse, a chorus, a bridge maybe.
So it had like pads.
It had pads and
atmospheric kind of sound.
Yeah, atmospheric kind of stuff.
Right.
But very straightforward, the same chords.
Right.
Which are not really conveying emotion, because at the end of the day, you want to take someone on a journey. If you're making a song, you have to take them on a journey, and that journey has a starting point, an end point, but in between, it can't be just a block.
No.
It has to be high and low moments. It has to be fast and slow moments. It has to be, you have to give them moments to contemplate, to, you know, just take a breather, then take them back on that journey again. And that's that's what I know to build a song to do.
Yeah.
But if someone then comes that doesn't know that structure, and they don't understand what it means to convey emotion through all that, because whether it's a sound that you're picking, it's percussive stuff, it's the way the singer is singing, or the chords that you play, because chords also affect emotion. You have to be intentional about what you are doing so that you convey the right emotion. If your words say, I'm very sad, I had a very sad day, but the music is pumping and you are you're having a happy moment over a very sobering lyric, there's a mismatch there. Sometimes it works. There's tension that we create. Where I've done a song, another story on the tribute album to my late wife, a song that was a very sad one. We did a version which was a very, ballady, piano and strings, orchestration kind of thing. It was a song saying good night, goodbye, sort of. We then remixed it to like a very Afro-pop house kind of vibe,
right,
where it was, pumping, but still the same sad emotion. That happens. You can do that in music, but most of the time,
right,
you want whatever words you're saying to convey the same emotion. So my role as a producer is to create all those different things in one song so that it becomes one full story over 3 minutes, 4 minutes, but a very comprehensive story,
right,
a very robust, well put together story. So most of the times, a lot of our artists don't know all that, and they just hear, they're holding on to their idea a whole lot,
right.
and they don't want to let go so that someone else can mold it into something better.
Do they sometimes give you some reference tracks, or is that not part
I
of
then ended up having to ask for that from this artist.
Okay. Would it have been better in this case to
Yeah.
ask for reference tracks up front, do you think? Or like,
I
you just
did
trust
ask-
that these things happen naturally, and if they have to, go full circle, then it happens? Like, what's that process for you when you initially take on a client to know it's the best process for both parties?
So I'll obviously use the reference a lot,
Yep.
whatever demo that they send, the voice note or whatever. But I also then ask where they find their inspiration.
Right.
I ask which artist they listen to.
Yeah.
What sort of vibe
Yep.
they go with. Because no one wants to sound like everybody. You have a specific set of inspiration or artists that you listen to. So I asked for all that.
Right.
And in my interpretation of her idea versus what her inspiration is, I came up with something.
Okay, so you interpreted that in your own way, essentially.
Yeah, it was my own interpretation,
Yep.
which generally...
Based on the information you got, essentially acquired enough information to be able to make an interpretation.
Yeah.
But still wasn't aligned to...
Even based on what you're saying now, I think where a lot of things fall astray between producer and artist relationships is communication.
Right.
So if things are not communicated clearly...
Yeah.
The producer can... obviously, I then ask as well, am I free to shape this thing?
Yeah.
Am I free to change the melody?
And up until now, is this all via text, email?
It's via text.
Right.
And some of it is a call as well.
Okay.
And yeah, we are communicating. And I think I get the idea. This person wants to have enough of their song in there, but they're also okay with me bringing something that adds value to, because ultimately what I'm doing, I believe I'm adding value, but the value I'm adding might not be what the other person wants. And I've had to learn that through the production process. And even some of the work we've done together at Music Valley, because you've given me creative freedom over some of the projects that we do, some of the edits that I have to do. But at times, some of my creativity is not really serving the bigger picture. And that's where there has to be a sense of humility as well from both parties to understand that, okay, I want my idea to go out, but I might not have the knowledge as to how best to package it. But then also the producer needs to know that I have creative ideas, but they might not be the best way to serve the artist or the client that I'm working with. And where we then, like ultimately where we got to with this client is that we sat together in the same room and then we brought our different biases, but we also brought our A game, whatever the best I can bring, the best that the artist can bring. And then together we come up with one thing that's blending all these different things, but in a way where we are navigating it without hard feelings, without tension, without, because sometimes over text, and I'm sure you know this, there can be so much misinterpretation of what the other person is saying, and people can take offense very quickly. Things can escalate very quickly over misunderstandings on text. But if you're in the same room, you realize, we're still trying to achieve the same thing. But you just then panel beat it towards what it needs to be.
I like that. Panel beating.
Yeah.
Panel beating. Awesome. And so in the end, the client was happy with the project and it sort of met all the expectations.
Yep.
Just it took a while to kind of get there through, ultimately being in the same room.
Yeah.
And, in some situations and probably a lot of situations, because you're working with clients overseas, depending on the workflow, it's not required at all, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. All right. So let's go deeper into your past and in terms of your faith and your Christian upbringing and background.
Yeah.
I read a quote that your father said once to you that your music will be heard by kings one day. Yeah. Is that right?
Yeah.
Why don't you tell us about that? What was that experience like for you?
I think the faith side of things comes first. And if you have a parent that can build a sense of faith in you, already you are able to take on whatever comes. And between my father, my biological father, and my spiritual father, from a younger age, there were so many positive words spoken into me that made me realize that I could overcome anything and I could do anything. And through the scriptures themselves, it becomes an even much more clearer picture of what your parent is trying to tell you when you can then read it and understand it for yourself. Obviously, there's different interpretations to different things, but once you can grasp what the word is saying to you and you're able to build faith for the thing that faces you, you could face anything. I've faced a whole lot of stuff. I've been in rooms with kings, like you said. I've been in rooms with someone who's dying, and you actually get to see it come to an actual climax on the worst case scenario kind of situation. But a lot of it I was able to face not because of something that got built in me or that just showed up in the moment, but it was words that were spoken over my life over a longer period of time. It was also books that I got to read over a longer period of time, including the Bible itself, that I believe most of my faith has obviously been built around the scriptures and what I've learned from them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess, so from a creative point of view, would you say that you get a lot of your inspiration mainly through scripture?
Yeah.
This in later part of your career, or does this kind of the beginning of your music journey as well? And was there a kind of transition where you realize, okay, in order to get inspiration now, this is really what is feeding my inspiration, so I'm going to stay in this realm, in this lane, and that's going to give me, essentially feed everything back into my creative inspiration? Because at the end of the day, artists get inspiration from so many things.
Yeah.
And I think, nature and events, people, circumstances, philosophy, feelings, which are all part of life.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to know from someone who really, is 100% committed to his faith and obviously preaches and talks about the word, and what's that been like for you? Do you feel like it's been a smoother ride for you when you sort of stick to that lane, or do you feel like maybe you're now a little bit perhaps limited in who you can reach sometimes because it's obviously more geared towards a gospel or Christian community?
Yeah.
Like, how's that been for you as a musician, as an artist?
That's an interesting question. I hope I answered well.
Yep.
But I would think there's three different aspects to it. The first aspect is the fact that I had to, at some point, become what we call born again, which is coming to an experience with Jesus Christ himself, him opening himself up to you and you receiving him, believing in him, and confessing with your mouth that he is Lord, and then you become a new person. And by that confession, you sort of become a citizen of a different kind of place. And that opens up a whole lot of things,
right,
as far as I'm concerned,
yep,
which is part of the inspiration you're talking about,
right,
where, which is the second thing for me, that the Spirit infuses the ideas into your subconscious or your soul, your mind, whatever you want to call it. And then it becomes your life becomes an expression of that inspiration that has come through the Spirit that's within you. Christ in us, the hope of glory, like the Bible says. And there's infinite resource as far as that's concerned. You get enough inspiration for anything. And the other part for me would have been that which was built in me through my father, my parent, who laid the foundation for me. I saw him serve God from a young age. As I was a little baby, I saw him serving God. That's all I ever knew. So as far as, yes, inspiration comes from the Holy Spirit that's in me. As far as, yes, I had an encounter with Jesus Christ and gave my life to him, which is the second thing. The third thing is that I grew up seeing someone who was serving God, and that's all I ever knew. So I knew at some point in my life, I'm going to end up doing this stuff. And whether I understand it or not, at that point, I hadn't been born again yet. I was just a child looking at their father. Some of it, I would be with him, right next to him in church as he's leading, as he's preaching, as he's doing church meetings with other church leaders and stuff like that. And that became a template for me. So for me to serve God and to do what I do in church and all that is part of my life. I don't do it so that people get to see that I'm great at anything. I do it because that's all I know to do. So whether there's a level of inspiration happening there's impact that's happening, it's impact coming out of me just doing normal life. Though for someone else, it might seem like it's a grandiose thing. I'm doing something major or whatever. But to me, it's just basic life that I have learned from my dad, that I get inspiration through the Spirit that's within me, through reading the scriptures as well, and through the encounter I had with Christ. So it's a combination of a whole lot of things. And where you're talking about limitation as to who I can deal with, I think it then becomes my responsibility also to become better at the skill side of things, where I can acquire skill over something, so that I can give to the Lord a worthy sacrifice, something that's without blemish. I'm not giving a substandard thing to God and expecting great results. I have to go to school. I have to study at Berkeley. I have to look for the best school for whatever I'm trying to study, so that I become the best at what I'm doing, not to get on this pedestal where people can put me on I can get some crown or whatever. But I'm doing it so that by the time I'm doing something for God, there's no blemish, there's no distraction. Whoever gets to listen, whether they're Christian or not, they can appreciate the jazz song that I've created for what it is, not because it's a Christian song. I've had people, random people, someone from the gym I met, they're like, oh, what do you do? I tell them I make music. Oh, can I hear, where do I find your music? I tell them where to find it. They listen, they will find a nice jazz song there because I'm doing it, giving my best, doing my best not to be put on some platform, but so that what I do does not have any loopholes in it. So if you're operating in your giftedness at the highest quality you are able to give into it. You are not negligent in any way. Someone else is going to appreciate it. Someone else with a soul within them will recognize that this is good stuff. It doesn't just need to be Christians who are listening to it. Though, generally, I end up just working with Christian people. And it's weird how it happens. I come into a studio in Point Cook and there's Christians there. I go to the first service here in Australia that I go to is at Planet Shakers. And of course, you meet a Christian community there. So most of your friends become Christians. But that doesn't mean that my real estate agent needs to be a Christian, because we're still relating with people we've done interviews and podcasts here with like counselors, and we've met mayors and people like that. It doesn't mean that I'm not going to shake hands with someone because they're not a Christian. That's a very limited way of living. So even in the music world, I'm not limiting myself, though naturally there's just a gravitation towards people who believe the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think you've answered that quite well, to be honest. It's an interesting thought, because I personally have gone through I still go through and really think about the way in which the Spirit works through people. And I'm the type of thinker that really wants to understand and look behind the curtain and see like the mechanics of that process unfold. So I'm very curious to know how it's played out in other people's lives.
Yeah.
And I've sort of gone from sort of working with Eastern philosophy and cultures and modalities and Western. I've always had the Western kind of foundation.
Yeah.
And the sort of Christian Orthodox foundation from a young age. But, I wasn't raised in the church. We didn't go to church every weekend. So naturally I was kind of keen to explore all modalities and kind of come up with my own, choice, which is what I've done. And sort of everything's kind of intertwined very nicely. I'm just very curious. That's a kind of great way to answer that question for me personally. All right, so let's move on to. Are you okay to talk a bit about your album Free and sort of the inspiration behind that? Yeah. So why don't you tell us? So you produced an album which was back in when was it? 2022.
Yeah.
A tribute to your late wife.
Yeah.
Why don't you walk us through that and just tell everyone obviously what the album is and with inspiration behind it?
So the album is called Free. It's got 14 tracks on it, released in 2022, but really the journey began 3 years before that, and maybe even 3 years before that. I had, like I said, I was starting to make songs, fiddle with things for myself, because I had faced the frustrations where you feel like this song should be like this for someone else. Right. But then they're like, oh, no, it's my song. I want it like this. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to do my own album, or at least create my own songs. And they're a fusion of crazy things. Did about 6 songs, put them aside. I got married in 2015, and this was to a South African. I was Zimbabwean. Different cultures coming together, which was interesting. But she was also a Christian, so it was great in that we converged there. But 4 years later, she passed away, and that rocked my world big time. It's a long story. Getting into it would need another podcast for that. But after that, I obviously initially went to a very dark place. And then coming out of it, I started reading books, some books that helped. I'm not sure if you know Eckhart Tolle, but he's like, I could hear from what you're saying, some of his philosophies. They helped me a lot, stillness and, calming and being able to be present and things like that. And he also talks about God and Jesus in a very interesting way. But read some of that, read the Bible a lot, cover to cover, maybe 2 times in that season. And then coming out of it, I then started just searching through her stuff, my late wife's stuff, burning stuff and all that. But I came across some of poems that she wrote, and there was this one particular poem where she was talking about finding a place where there's no more suffering, no more pain. She found a man that, held out his hand to her and said, "I've come to set you free," that kind of thing. I then wrote a song out of it. Then I decided to compile it with some of the other stuff I had written before. And I also started writing other things. Like, for example, there's a song I wrote off of a voice note she was singing to our daughter, "Good Night." And I made it into a song of her singing to our daughter that she's saying goodbye. Like, good night still, but like as in she was sleeping. So there's songs like that, songs like "Free," "Good Night." There's some, obviously, gospel stuff there, some fast-paced things. It's a like, I like fusing a whole lot of different ideas. There's some Cuban jazz song there. There's some Afro jazz song there. But it became this whole story of my life, really. Because my life involves jazz. My life involves the gospel. It involves the pain of losing a wife. It involves me being a parent, so there's a song to my daughter there. It involves a whole lot of mesh as far as the music itself is concerned, different genres. So it became all that, which we then released doing a launch. We did an album launch in 2022 as well. Invited a whole lot of people in there. It was a free event called Free. And the premise of it is, for me, the Bible verse, which says that if the Son sets you free, then you're free indeed. So the tagline for the entire thing became, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." Created a brand out of it. I'm not wearing the merch today, but I'm always wearing it. If anyone knows me, they've seen me wearing Free at some point. There's a verse behind the T-shirt,
Right,
which says, "Whom the Son sets free is free indeed." And for me, the freedom that Christ affords us does not necessarily take away pain. It doesn't take away suffering, because I've been on that side of things. I know that giving your life to Christ doesn't mean suffering is taken away.
Yeah.
Not immediately anyway. But it means, in spite of all that, you can still operate. Even for me, at a very practical level, even after losing a wife, feeling like it's the end of the world, with a 2-year little daughter that you don't know what you're going to do with. You don't know how you're going to raise her without her mother. But you can still do an album that people can appreciate and listen to and enjoy. You can still produce music. I did a lot of projects after that. I did a lot of things where I was giving hope and encouragement to other people. But if I had taken that one moment to, be the definer of my life, that I'm a fail, that life just, crashes around me and things just go awry all the time, then even now, having been married again, living in Australia, having met you and so many other amazing people, I would have stopped at that moment.
right.
So there's so many things that happen in our lives that sometimes take away our joy, take away our freedom to just, be expressive and to enjoy life. But if you stay parked in that place, you will be stuck.
Yeah.
But there's so much in you that just requires you to exercise your freedom that you find. For me, it was in Christ. That freedom in Christ, which allows me to be expressive in music, to express my pain through music. And that has become, I guess, my mantra, which is the freedom, the T-shirts that I always wear, and that if the Son sets you free, then you're totally free indeed.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, thank you.
It's funny, we talked about this in our first kind of mock episode, in terms of the, hero's journey and kind of how we go through, challenges and, crisis as opportunity. And sort of what's happened is you've gone through a pretty big crisis, probably one of the worst crises, things that, I wouldn't wish upon anyone.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's, you've seen the blessing it's given through you and through others. And it's allowed you to continue to serve and to continue to help others, which, you don't serve anyone by crawling under a rock.
Yeah.
So, very powerful message there. Thanks for sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing. All right. So a couple more topics that I wouldn't mind covering.
Yep.
So your life in ministry now, you've studied ministry.
Yeah.
And where to now for Mark in terms of ministry? Is this something you've kind of just trying to, is it a temporary kind of thing where you want to remain as a producer, or are you wanting to actually move more into the ministry aspect of ministry?
Well, the thing about me is I believe that whatever step I take is ordered by the Lord himself, that I'm guided, and I kind of have an idea of where I'm going. I don't know what the bigger picture will look like. At the moment, what it looks like is me serving in Planet Shakers.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe so much in serving in the house of the Lord. As much as we get born again, we have an experience with Christ, I think there has to be a way of channeling that by serving in building something that's bigger than yourself.
Mm-hmm.
I think ultimately there has to be a sense of seeing a bigger picture than yourself, which involves other people. And that's what that looks like. On the music front, I will continue to serve whoever comes my way. I'm not limiting myself to the specific people or whatever. If someone comes my way, I'm going to help them and serve them the best way that I can. There's also a big mandate from myself to help younger musicians
Mm-hmm.
who do not know the way, who are stuck in, which is one of the reasons why I loved Music Valley, in that the entire idea is to create the tools and the roadmap for someone who is attracted by the final thing, but, take them through the ropes,
Right.
until they get to that point where they're ready. And, also provide an environment for them to, find like-minded people and walk together with them. So that's my goal. My ministry side of things right now is to give tools. We have social media now. You can easily sit in front of a camera and just share stories like what I'm doing now. I'm trying as much to share stories that can encourage someone else, to show that it's not always glamorous. It's not the final picture, yes, looks great, but you still need to get your hands dirty. You still need to learn the basics of music. You still need to study. You still need to be told by a music director that what the part you're playing is wrong, and you need to go learn the part. So if we can help and shape and mentor people from a very basic understanding of whatever music is to a place where they can now stand on their own and do their own thing, and also create a career for themselves and be able to channel whatever is within them in the most well-packaged manner, then we would have done a great job. So I'm here for it, and I would love to participate in it as much as possible. I believe that's where I'm called to serve.
Beautiful. So if there's a young teenager, for example, young Mark is probably between 14, 15, younger or a bit older, they're starting out of their journey and they're looking for that inspiration and guidance. Like, what is the one thing that you would say to that young male or female right now to get them started in the right direction?
Find a system that has the I would say there should be a word for this, that has the reputation of being able to move someone from point A to point B and just plug into it. I think even looking back at my own house, my own home, I believe my father raised so many leaders in the house. If I had plugged into his system well enough and long enough, I think I would have come out with much more information at a consistent level. Because at the end of the day, especially with creativity, you need feedback. You need a feedback system that tells you need to do 1, 2, 3 things. So there's accountability that's important in music or in learning or in growing. But there's also a feedback system where you need to be told what you're doing is correct or wrong. Because there's so many people out there who are, like, especially with AI now, you could just pick up something and just run with random things. You could make a song in 5 seconds if you really wanted to. But ultimately there has to be a feedback system that allows you to know that you are barking up the right tree.
Yeah, interesting. Because I remember we talked about this last time, and it was definitely a point of conversation for us, even sort of guiding you through some of the steps to kind of get you on board with Music Valley. And, you know, we built a little timetable for you to kind of guide some of the younger piano students at the time as well. So, you know, let's talk a bit about this. This is kind of like the closing topic I really want to go into, because system is the key word.
Yeah.
And I think for a lot of people, especially creatives, they don't know what a system is. So if we just sort of go through that, you've got a system is a series of procedures or established processes that are strategically tested, or implemented and tested, that are proven to grow someone in terms of skill, in terms of career, or, you know, output.
Yeah.
Okay, so we talked about accountability. So if you want to, it's one thing to find someone who can guide you, who can be your friend and kind of have conversations with, maybe on an emotional level, and sort of support that. That's great, but that's not a system. Okay, so that's a feeling. It's a guide, but it's not a system.
Yeah.
Right. So clearly, to delineate those two, but having maybe a team that you're plugging into that's already, let's say, you know, Planet Shakers, or, you know, a music community, a church community, is a system that's been established with rules, with relationships, with agreements. Right. So there's already agreements that bind that team to not fall apart. Which is a big topic. We talk about this in our previous episodes a lot, in terms of what, you know, some of the flaws of trying to put bands together, and kind of the conversations that we as management have to, you know, conflict resolutions, expectations, how to have tough conversations with someone when they're not pulling their weight, you know, 3 chances and you're kind of demoted and maybe given a second chance. So there's these systems in place already that, once plugged in, what it enables is, and, you know, correct me on this, does it enable someone to go further along in their chosen trajectory, or to even start somewhere and have a direction? You know, what does it ultimately give that young aspiring artist or musician that, let's say, you know, jumping on YouTube, or, you know, doing 10,000 reps a day on scales, or learning all the theory in the world, and doing a 1 degree to kind of put all your eggs in one basket can offer? Like, what does that offer that, say, you know, a degree, or a one mentor, or you know, an awesome deal on you know, playlist deal, or whatever it is? What is it that offers that these individual components don't?
There's so many wins that come from being part of a system. And I think it goes beyond even just music. Of course, I feel like, generally, because I'm a creative who's also very highly spiritual, I think there's a very high spiritual side to music itself. And that spiritual side is covered by things like discipleship is important in the spirit world. Being part of a community is important. Isolation generally shows that you're actually deteriorating.
Right.
So even in music, isolation is a sign of deterioration more than it's a sign of, I'm going into my own cave to, I don't know, perfect my skill. Skills that are perfected through jam sessions are better than skills perfected by yourself at your own house. Because most of the times, without that feedback system, you think you're doing great things. You think you are the most amazing bassist in the world. But when you sit and you have to play Blue Bossa or Autumn Leaves, and you're given a solo, and then you crumble after just 5 seconds into your solo, then it means your muscles haven't been built to handle some of that, even though you're doing it by yourself at home. Because at home, there's no one telling you that you're missing your part or whatever. And some of that feedback might not even need to be coming from the management team. You see yourself when you get on stage that I messed up.
That's self-evident in a team.
Yeah, it's self-evident. And that feeling of letting a team down sometimes can help someone to actually step up. So I think without like just using that analogy, which in the spiritual side of things, you need discipleship, you need to have mentors, you need to have leaders, you need to have people trimming the edges. So it's the same thing with music. Without that, from a young age or from early on in your career, you would take longer to assimilate into any network or community, whether it's you trying to do gigs at pubs or restaurants, or you trying to sing in church but you only show up once a month or whatever. It doesn't work if you're not engaging with the system at a regular level.
Yeah, so the way that I see the system is really this kind of, it's a place, and it's built by a community or series of places that built by a community that have these structures in place that feed and nurture anything in terms of skill, in terms of spiritual needs, teamwork, accountabilities, all these kind of procedures and agreements that you seek outside to try to maybe eventually form yourself one day, but find it very difficult because it's something to do ultimately with what you're pursuing. It's you're pursuing mastering your skill or getting your next tune out, or developing your brand and architecture as an artist, which are all key tasks and projects. But it takes a village, it takes a team, it takes that support to not give up, to ensure that there's no isolation and that anyone is available to tap into as you go through, and not if, but when you actually encounter these challenges along the way.
Yeah.
Because we're going to encounter these challenges.
Yeah.
And it's better to have a team around you that you can, speak
Count
with
on.
and have already developed trust with, as opposed to not having anyone to talk to.
Yeah.
And then maybe having this random conversation with someone online that, wants to take your money.
Yeah. Which happens a lot now, yeah. And it's better if it's even someone, because sometimes people are now trusting sites and AI and things like that, which is a rabbit trail that you can go on, and you will lose lots of hundreds of dollars by the time you realize that, this is actually just marketing gimmicks. And there's a lot of that now. There are so many people who are running courses and things like that online now. It's easy to get a $50 piano course, but you stack those things up. I actually went through a season where I stacked up on a lot of these different courses, but they don't have enough of the entire system in place to actually guarantee that at the end of it all, you are better off than where you were at the start. And I think if someone can find a system that is proven to produce what they are trying to become, just plug into it as quickly as you can and just stick to it until you get to the end of it. Because most of the times, a lot of us don't have enough of the results for what we're trying to do because we're not going all the way with it. Like you're saying, someone is probably pursuing perfecting their skill or improving their skill, or they just want a platform if they know that Music Valley is going to be performing at such and such a big stage. They come and they just want to, just the clout that comes with it. But they are not necessarily wanting to engage with the entire thing. And if you then don't get the full results from it, because you are sort of stopping yourself midway. And I believe that for any human being, just try to find one thing that you stick to, run with it to the end, and at least see what you are like on the other side, as opposed to just spreading yourself thin and ultimately you're just a jack of all trades. You're putting your music everywhere. You're on the street today by yourself. Tomorrow you are trying to put together a band of friends, and it doesn't last because you don't even have the systems in place to not give up when the shifts are calling you. Because there's that also, the work side of things here in Australia. That's the other cultural shock that I faced, that some of the musicians you want to work with on a regular basis, they're actually not even available to come do a session for you. So you then have to sort of force things into happening, or you just end up doing one thing every 6 months.
Yeah, it's a common burnout thing we see, and this is kind of one of the reasons why, we really wanted to focus on giving young artists and musicians and any producer or creative the right guidance and conversation to help them not burn out, because it's about building something sustainable and, like you say, seeing through to the end. One of the things that you just reminded me about was I follow a guy called Dan Sullivan. He's a business leader in the entrepreneurial world, and he's got some great tools. And he talks about the 4 C's, which is really what you're saying in terms of sticking to something. You'll go through these 4 phases. So the first one is commitment. You've got to make the decision to commit to a time frame, because we're living in time, space, dimension. Yeah. Okay. So, whether it's 6 months, 3 months, a year, that's the first decision you've got to make, is to commit. I'm going to do this for 12 months. The second thing is you're going to, through the cultivation stage of doing the work, you're going to be faced with tests. And I experience this often. I'm sure you do too.
Yeah.
You're going to have to then find the courage to continue and push through, or face that first or second or third hurdle along the way.
Yeah.
But what happens is, and this is, I think this goes back to our topic of having faith, right? At that point, you've got 2 options. You can, throw in the towel, or you can have some inspiration and tap into spirit, to our Lord, to whatever divine guidance that you have to pull through and step into the unknown and have the courage. Yeah. So through that process is where you build capability, and that's where you realize you've pushed through. Yeah. And on the other side of that, that mountain or that challenge is a reflection point where you realize you have now the capability, and as a result, the confidence to do it all again.
Yeah.
And so
That's
forth.
True. Yeah.
So I think, it's on that note, tying it into having a system, having a series of, obviously the different components to it on its own is a bit fragmented, but when it's sort of all put together in sort of a streamlined fashion where you can go from one milestone to the next, and it's a pathway that's mapped out for others along the way, is what I look for, is what we've been building, is what I think you see as well, is in your, anyone that's coming through as a musician needs, in order to not just, tick off that 5,000, follower threshold or first album threshold, because what often happens is, and we've seen this happen, is these first-time artists release, spend $5,000-$10,000 on their first album release, and then all of a sudden they've spent everything, exhausted everything. They expect that because of that, everyone's going to find them.
Yeah, it doesn't work like
right.
that.
It's like buying a really good guitar and not having an amp.
Yeah.
Who's going to hear you?
Yeah.
Right. So same with marketing. It's like, well, now you've got to actually put on a new hat, and we've got to talk about marketing strategy. So the system knows about the kind of different milestones and different steps ahead, and puts these things in place so you can see that there is a pathway, so that you can walk in and go, okay, great. My job is to get to the first milestone, so I'm going to commit to that, and I'm going to give it everything. Great. Yeah. Once you've achieved that, you kind of set and reset, and you move forward. And that way, you're always building your career and not really ever giving up. Yeah. Which is what I've seen for too long in the industry. So. Awesome, Mark. It's been a really insightful conversation. I'm glad to have had you here in the hot seat inside Music Valley.
Thank you for having me.
If there's one last thing you want to share with the community before we wrap up, what would that be?
One last thing. I can't think of anything else except that God so loved the world that he gave his son, Jesus Christ, that whoever believes in him does not perish, but will have eternal life. That what we see is a passing phase, and there's something on the other side. And for me, I'd rather live it with Christ than without him. Yeah.
Thank you so much. God bless.
God bless.
Thanks for tuning in. If today's conversation sparks something in you, drop a review or send this to a person in the industry who you think needs to hear it. And if you're someone who's done playing small and ready to take your music or career to the next level, we'd love to talk. There's a link in the show notes to book a call with us. Let's explore how we can help you plan your next move and reach your goals faster. But most importantly, if you're listening to this right now, I want you to know I hear you, I see you, I appreciate you, and my team and I believe in you. With the right environment and the right team in your corner, anything is possible. I can't wait to see you again inside the valley.